Good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome in Salesforce FXR. And today we are going to talk about the Lightning Web Component and welcome in very first session of the 2019. And my name is Amit Chaudhary and I'm a Salesforce MVP and the founder of the Salesforce FXR. And I don't want to waste too much time here because everyone want to learn about the Lightning Web Component. So let's hand over to Jirna sir.
Thank you, Amit. Hey everyone, good morning, good evening as per your time zone, and I wish everybody had a great new year. So today the topic is Lightning Web Component. Amit already gave his introduction about me. I'm Senior Technical Architect working in IBM Global. I have my blog, you can follow my Twitter account as well. And if you have any question, please using chat window and we will try to get answer that as soon as possible or maybe at the end of the session. So the agenda for today's session is we are going to learn something about the Lightning Web Component. And just to set up the expectation, this is like a first session of the Lightning Web Component. So, and we have only 1 hour. So mostly we are going to cover the basics and the capability of the Lightning component, Lightning Web Component, and why that Lightning Web Component just came because we already have a Lightning component. So those kind of the discussions we would be doing. And like all of my session, this session is going to be the working session. I would be showing most of the time the demo and doing the code in front of you to show how the LWC works. So the agenda is first thing, we have to clear our base, our concept basically, that why exactly the Lightning Web Component now? As we already have a Lightning component, we already have Aura component, so why this sudden change? And in order to understand that, we have to understand some non-Salesforce technology, which is an HTML5. So first 10 to 15 minutes, we would be discussing that. And after 20 minutes, we would come back to the Salesforce piece and we will discuss about the Lightning Web Component. So the question in everybody's mind might come now about why Salesforce has released the Lightning Web Component. We already have a Lightning component, we already have Aura framework, and everything is working fine, so why the sudden change? Now, to explain that, we have to go back 4 years back. So Lightning component was initially launched in 2014. Now at that time, if you remember, there are so many other frameworks being launched: Angular, React.js, Angular 2, and CommonJS. And the reason for all these JavaScript frameworks and everything is the need of web application, web-based application increased drastically. There were no web standard which would help us to scale it. So to fill those gaps, Angular, React.js came and some other framework came. And that framework became language, kind of. Everybody started using React, Angular, and the only reason for that was the web standard was not open. HTML5 standard was not supportive for the enterprise level application. And Salesforce joined that team, and Salesforce became one of the company where they launched Aura framework, and they started filling up the gap using this custom JavaScript library, say, framework on the language. Say. Now fast forward, what happened then in 2017, 18, you can say 16 as well. ECMAScript came, new version of JavaScript came, cool stuff started coming up. All modern browsers started supporting native capability, and one of the native capability, like I'm saying, just one of them is HTML5 web component, which is a vanilla component. So most of the problem which these frameworks were trying to fill up were already started to be supported out of the box using all these modern browsers. Then the question is, if out of the box browsers already supports most of the things which is being worked heavily by these frameworks like Aura framework, Angular, React, why should we do that? Because we have to think about it, right? There is 3 layers. One is your browser, one is your application where you're writing the code, and then there is the middle JavaScript, which is doing kind of the communication between your browser and your application. And even one however the fast that framework is, the important thing to understand is there is some time being used by that middle framework. So one thing in the technology, if you all are here and you might understand, is change is inevitable. We have to stay with the change. So even though Salesforce released Aura framework, we have to adopt the change, make sure that our Salesforce platform is scalable as per the native browser capability. Still, there is a little bit need of the middle framework, but very little as compared to the Aura. And that is the main reason Salesforce has launched Aura framework, Web Lightning framework. So we already discussed about this. So just to summarize, we have to go with the industry standard. No need for the heavy JavaScript code or Aura framework or Angular to parse or to fill the gap, which was not 4 years back in the native browser. And then there is a support of reusability, scalability, right, and encapsulation. So because of that, Salesforce launched Lightning Web Component. But before understanding Lightning Web Component, we have to understand HTML5 Web Component. So just like Aura framework or just like the LWC, which we are going to use, I would be using word LWC sometime because of the Lightning Web Components mouthful. So I hope you all will understand. So the 4 pillar of HTML Web Component is import, template, custom element, and shadow DOM. So what I will do is I will quickly show a quick demos. Maybe I will show the quick demo on the demo templating first, that how the template works, and I will show you how out of the box browser supports all this functionality. So what I would be doing is I will quickly jump on demo. So I have a Visual Studio Code. All I will be doing is let me create one new folder, and next Saturday, maybe I can say HTML5 demo. And this is simple, plain HTML. And I will create template demo. I'm not on Salesforce yet. I'm still on the vanilla HTML. And let's try to understand how the thing works here. So this is here, I will say this is template demo. This is standard Salesforce, and I will launch it in my browser. So this is the browser. It is simple HTML, no Salesforce. I will say hello world. Refresh it. And you say, so this is normal HTML page I have, and let's see how the templating will work here. So in order for template to work, I mean, previously it was not there, but now natively, like I said, browsers have started supporting templates. I will define a template tag. This is again HTML5, something fancy, and I will give this template as like template, let's say top movies, something like that. And I can have HTML component here. I will say what is movie name. This is just a placeholder I'm going to use, and then I'm going to say let's say one more element paragraph, and let's say some description is going to be here. Now the question is, how do we process this template? And again, if you are familiar with Angular or React, you might know that templating is one of the important part of the frameworks like those. I will create a div tag here, and I will give this div tag an ID, something like template base folder. Quickly, I will start creating the script tag. And what I will do is I will declare a variable. And let's say the variable name is movies. And I will create an array.
Movies is a form of the noun movie, which means motion picture theater, often preceded by the. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, Alexa.
You're welcome.
Oops, that's no issue. So what I will do is I have created a movie object, which is an array. Now array is going to have a multiple objects. So let's say some movie Lord of the Rings that has a name parameter, and then I have a detail, another parameter. I will say some info about a lot of the rings. I will create another object in the same JSON, same format. Let me copy this. This is very important to understand before we understand Salesforce Lightning Web Component, that how HTML5 works. It will make things a little bit easier. So let's say one movie is Star Wars, and again, let's say some information is about Star Wars here. Now what we have to do here is we have to get document. So normal in Salesforce, we already have a template which is a temp top movie. So I will have something like this. So document.query selector, we have a template with the ID this. Now let me declare a variable which is, let's say, placeholder, and same I will do this. And we do have a temporary div tag where we are going to display everything here, and we will say something like this. Now what I will do is I will just iterate through. So I want to display this movie in this template format where the movie name would be in H3 and there would be a paragraph tag. So simply I will use a for loop, and I will say, let's say there is I in movies. Movies variable I already have declared here, and I will say, so now here is the trick. So we already have a template defined here. So we will say t dot content, again everything in HTML, no JavaScript library, and I will have query selector. And from the template I want to get H3. So from the template I will get H3, and I will say in the text, I already have movies here declared here on the line number 21. I will iterate through movies, and this for loop, whatever the index of I from there. So movies already have name, so I will use name. Same way, template also have a paragraph. So instead of H3, I will get paragraph, and I will get detail. So now movie, as you can see, there is a detail. Now what I will do is I will clone all this information, and I will say document dot import node, and we already have t dot content, and there is another parameter true. Please mute your mic if you're not speaking. Now all we have to do is, so this is a placeholder we have. What we did is we use this template. Now the template is not rendered on the browser. It will just stay on your DOM, and you can use your JavaScript to populate the values in the template format. So here is a separation of concern. So we are not doing anything special to how to render it. I mean, it's H3 tag or paragraph tag. That's another piece. That is a view part. Now the data, which is a controller, is another part. And we are easily able to fix those information. Even if there is some extra component or extra attribute, doesn't matter to us. All I have to do now is placeholder dot append child. And whatever the clone element is here, I will just do that. So I just saved it. Hello world. Now, as you can see, Lord of the Rings, movie name, paragraph, movie name, paragraph. You can use styling as much you want here in the template. Like you see, right, template has not been rendered. So the movie name and the description, this is, so let me, if I comment this code, and if I go back here, sorry, nothing is being rendered other than the hello world. So that's how templating works in Salesforce. Sorry, how the templating works in normal HTML5. Let me quickly give you another demo, and then we will start with the Lightning Web Component. So this another demo is, I will say how to create a custom HTML component. That's counterpart of a Lightning Web Component. So custom, let's say HTML.html is here. And here Okay. Here we have, as we say, HTML5 is here. Now we are going to create a custom web component in HTML5. So here, else have if I reload it, custom web component demo. So let's see how the thing works for the custom element. So what I want to do here again, I like movies. So what I will do is I want to create, let's say, a custom element, name movie card. And what I want to do is I want to give the name and I want to give the detail. Something like this. Now, so this is not the standard HTML component. This is the component which we are going to create now. So let's try to understand how can we create this component quickly. Name movie card in HTML5. So we have to create a class, and class name can be anything like demo apex hour, and I will say extends. Now in HTML5, if you want to create any custom element, you have to extend the HTML element class. That's it. Now it will have a it is going to have a constructor, and we can use say constructor like this. So this, whenever this element would be created, this constructor would be called. And if you are creating any customer, you have to call the parent customer using the keyword super. That's all. Now what I want to do is I want to, in this element, whatever this element, so this inside this movie card, I want to generate the inner HTML. Inner HTML. And what I'm going to do in this inner HTML is I'm going to have h1 tag, and I'm going to have here paragraph tag. Now we'll come back here. What is this HTML? This is again similar to the template demo which we had. Now what we have to do is we have to, how the HTML5 or the browser will know that there is an attribute named name or there is attribute named detail. So we have to define this attribute in this custom HTML. So it's very simple, just a setter and get a property. So I will say set name, let's say, value is going to come. Now I will say this dot. There is a method here in HTML element, and the name of the method is set attribute. And here I'm saying we have attribute name. We want to declare attribute name, and the value would be this one. The value which is going to be passed and on. All standard Java, Apex, .NET, all standard programming languages have this. Now, if someone wants to get the name, simply we have to say return this dot get attribute, and I will say return name. Same way for the name we have to do for the description, because sorry, detail. All I will do is just change this detail. I will change this as well as detail. Perfect. Now we have to access these parameters inside this inner HTML. So all I have to do now is something like this. In HTML5, you can, so normally what we have to do in normal scenario, something like this, plus or whatever the variable, but not in HTML5. In HTML5, you can reference the variable inside string using $curly brace. Again, this is not Salesforce, all HTML5. When I'm saying whatever the name, print it here, and I'm saying the detail. So it's a very simple component we have created. Component name movie card, and let's say the name is again Lord of the Rings. And here I'm saying some detail. Once that is done, all we have to do now is to let browser know that we have created movie card custom element. And how to do that? Very simple. All we have to do is HTML5 API window custom elements that we are going to define using this parameter. And we are going to say that, okay, I want to define, what is my company name is movie card, and the class which defines movie card is this class. That's it. We should be good. Actually, this should be out of the class. That is the reason I'm getting some linter errors here. It has to be here. Now let's go back. Okay, nothing is happening. Inspect. Console. Cannot read property define of and where is define?
Capital of custom elements.
Sorry, can you what someone is saying?
At the end, it is, yeah. At the end, if you go end of the code, window.custom_element.define.
Oh, okay. So
Same
basically,
for set attribute as well, Jitendra. For set attribute, you have same facilities.
which set attribute? So set attribute I have, right? Set attribute for detail I have and set attribute.
You misspelled attribute. It's ATTT.
Oh, okay. Sorry for that. So I will say get attribute here.
Line number 28.
Here and same I will do with the set attribute.
Simple D 28.
And line 20.
Line number 40. No, 40 is fine. Yeah.
Okay, let me try. Okay, let's see what happens now. Yep. So thank you, team. Thank you so much for identifying my typos. Like I expected this might happen, and thank you so much for giving an attention. So this is how the things are working now. So it's a very simple one, right? It might seem to you that, okay, it's simple H1 and H3, but this is actually our web component and we can do whatever we want to do here. Now the same way, every web component in HTML5 web component I'm talking about is have a life methods, lifeline. So basically, Lifecycle method basically. So there is one method which is named as a connected callback. And you can have console.log. You can say element inserted in DOM. Same way, we have another method, element remove from DOM, and that method is disconnected callback. If I go back on my example, and if I reload it, so you see this element inserted in DOM executed. So if you want to do anything with the lifecycle, these are the two methods which would be useful for you. Now, here is something which I want to do. I have, let's say, style. Everybody's, and what I want to do is the paragraph color I want to do, let's say, is red color. So red. So if I go back here and if I have paragraph is red, so let me give you a problem. And then, and this is happened in the Lightning also, and you will understand. And I will say there is another paragraph, and I will say I am not in custom element. So here what happens now. What is happening is I have a style sheet for the paragraph. Now that style sheet is using a red color for the paragraph. Now the paragraph inside my component is also red, and the paragraph in my main body is also red. Now there is no encapsulation, right? So the problem here is, if I write some custom CSS here, that custom CSS will mess up the Lightning or the main HTML CSS. How should we control our CSS, our custom component CSS, independent of this CSS? So this is always something issue. So what I want to do basically here is, let me show you something. If I can do something like this, style, and let's say I want to have a paragraph. I want to have a paragraph color, not as a red color. Let's say I want to have a paragraph color as RG, let's say blue color. What would happen if I do something like this? Nothing, right? The reason nothing is happening because our paragraph here, this is in control, this is in charge. So what should we do so that our component would have our own style? And this concept in HTML5 is known as encapsulation. How should we encapsulate our component? So to encapsulate our component, very easy to do. All we have to do here in this component is declare our component as a shadow DOM. So what I will say is something like this. So shadow DOM is another attribute. As you can see, we discussed about template. We discussed about custom element. We understood both. Now the shadow DOM is the what we are discussing. How do we encapsulate our component? Very simple to do in HTML5. All I have to do is I have to declare a variable shadow root, and all we have to do is in this custom component, I am going to attach shadow, and I will say there are two modes, open and close. I will not talk about that, but this is just assume that this is what we have to do. And now all I have to do is in this variable inner HTML, so whatever the HTML component content we have, this one, okay. And what we will do is we will declare this HTML is just one variable, something like this. Now everything else is similar. All we did is, instead of directly populating inner HTML, on that inner HTML first we say it's a shadow root. Let's see what happens next. See, so this is really very powerful feature. We just had our own custom styling, and if I inspect this element, if you see, this is how browser understands that this component which we have created is not the normal element. This is a shadow element, and which will encapsulate its style, which will make sure that our component style is not messing up with the page style. If you are in the Lightning component, you might know initially when Lightning component came, this was the problem. The style sheet of our Lightning component were getting impacted either because of the parent component or our component was causing some issue. So this kind of encapsulation Aura did handle. Aura framework did handle Lightning component, but now this is out of the box using shadow element. So that's all about HTML5. It took exactly half time. Let's jump on the Lightning Web Component. If anyone have any question, please feel free to post in chat and we'll start. So again, I will not spend much time on the presentation or anything. I will directly jump on working session. So I will open new window basically. Let me close this one. So I'm in Visual Studio now. And so you would need a Visual Studio to work for the Lightning Web Component. You would need a pre-release or Lightning Web Component is not yet public. So your sandboxes and your production org will not have this. You need to ask for the pre-release. So what should we do now? So in MacBook, Control Shift P, and I will say I have to create SFDX project. And project name, I will say Lightning Web Component or Apex Hours. 12 Jan. So it has just created a SFDX project for me. I already have some of the org here, and let me, so I will going to run command SFDX force. So what I'm trying to do is, let me see how many orgs I already have authenticated. So if you see, I already have a dev hub org, name as the P release, and then I have some scratch org. So what I will do is I will create, so this demo for the Lightning Web component, I am going to use the scratch org. So I will again say Control Shift P. And there is create a default scratch org. And I'm going to use the same JSON. It is asking me for the org alias, and I'm going to say January 12. It's a scratch. January 12. Into the number of days for the validity, I will say 30. So what I'm doing right now is this code. I'm not going to use my developer account or my sandbox. I would be using scratch org, and my scratch org is already on the latest re-release, so that I would be allowed to create a Lightning Web component. So now I already have a scratch org. Now let me launch my scratch org. Again, before launching my scratch org, I will run the same command just to see how many orgs I have. So now, as you can see, these orgs are fine, but for the scratch org, this is the scratch org I just created, and this is my default. So I'm going to run a command SFDX force org open, and I'm going to say I want to open scratch org, which is on January 12th. Let's wait for it. So this is my scratch org. First thing I have to do is, for the demo purpose, I will just create a demo app. So in the force app, or you see Aura folder is already there, LWC is already there. I'm going to create a new Lightning app. My Lightning app name is going to be demo.app. Okay, my bad. I should create new Lightning app. I will just say demo. So now I have my Lightning app. What I will do is I will create a div tag in my Lightning app, and I will say Lightning. Let me see. I already have a quick code snippet save here. Lightning Web Component demo on Apex server. So let's deploy this app on the scratch org. I'm going to run a, so in order to run the command, I'm going to run this command basically. SFDX force org. Sorry, SFDX force. Actually, it's a source push. So whatever on my local Visual Studio Code, it will put on my default scratch org. As you can see that all these informations are added. Let's go back here on my developer console quickly. I will open Lightning resource. I already have a demo. I will simply preview it. And here we have a demo. Now if you see that,
Just use Control Shift T.
Yeah. So I already have this one. Thank you. Now what I will do is, one problem here is my SLDS or my app does not have SLDS. So in my app, again, this is not a Lightning Web Component yet. I'm still on the Aura, but I need this as a placeholder so that I can show you the Lightning Web Component examples. So I will say force SLDS. Again, I will push it. While it is getting pushed, what I will do is I want to create some grid system here. So my grid is going to have two columns. And here my grid is going to have two columns. We have some class. The class name is yes, grid. And this is yes. I'm saying this is nothing, it is a column in the grid. Very simple Lightning, again, an Aura component here. I'm saying place column 1 basically here. I'm saying column 2 here. So let's see. I'm going to push this again, the same command. SWDX4 source push, and say VS Code will detect whatever I have made changes and it will deploy. If I reload the page here, so all set for Apex server and everything. We have a column 1 and we have a column 2. Let's create a very simple Lightning Web Component. So now we will create a simple Lightning Web Component simply to greet the user. So I will go here, Control Shift P. I will say create. I will just use this one. So the key I press is Control Shift P, create Lightning Web Component, and the name of the component I'm going to give is greet text Lightning Web Component. So let's see if it's created.
No, the first selection was directory.
Oh,
and
my
then
bad. I always make that mistake. So let's say greet text LWC. Hopefully, awesome. So this command works. So if you see something which we did not cover in HTML5, but I did say that 4 pillar of web component, and one of the 4 pillar is import. So import is a mechanism or the capability in HTML5 component so that you can import another web page or library. So that's what one of the important thing. What Salesforce just did is it is using the import statement. It also used the class, and if you see it is also extending some element. Now of course it is not an HTML5 element, but this is something which Salesforce created, and the definition of this is coming from here. So browser needs to know that what are the class we are going to implement. So this is a very simple JavaScript. What I'm going to do is, again, I'm not going to cover much. So there are specifiers like track, and we can declare a public and private. All I will do is I'm going to say track a variable named greeting, and by default its name would be Apex hours. And all I have to do is I have to create a method saying that greet user. Okay, and this method is going to have an event, and we will call this method from HTML5. And I will declare a variable saying txt input. Now I don't know what is here, so let's wait here. I will not go much into the detail. And let's go on its HTML components. So we have great text here. So you see, this is the template. And if you observe our HTML5 demo, in HTML5 demo, we did use the exact template. So basically what Salesforce is doing is, Salesforce is relying on HTML5 that, okay, whatever the components we are going to use, we are going to use the template. So this is something which is Lightning Web Component is relying on HTML5 standards. So very simple, what I am going to do is, I am going to use Lightning card, basically. So this is a custom component again by Salesforce, and in the Lightning card, I'm going to say title is going to something. Let's say first component, and it supports icon. Anyone remember any icon? So 1, 2, 3. Let's say what is custom creative, something is there. I don't know what is the icon, but we will see. Now I'm going to use div, and this div, that's fine. I'm not going to do anything. All I'm going to do is, let's create a input text here. Input. Now I need to access this input element in my JavaScript code. So what I will do is, I will not use type. You can type as a text, or I'm going to use as a class. And so this is the class how I'm going to access this element in my JavaScript, and I'm going to say text input. And after that, I can use another out of the box, like maybe lightning button. Yep. I can use lightning button here. And lightning button gets a label, and I'm saying, okay, hey, greet the user. And I'm going to say, on click of this button, we have to call a JavaScript method. And that's nothing but, let's see what method we are creating. We are creating greet user. So now, if you remember the Lightning component or Aura component, one thing was Aura component creates so many attributes, like 5 bundles they used to say. Now in the Lightning Web component also there, but only 3 file initially is important, which is an HTML template, JavaScript we just did, and then there is a metadata XML. Now in metadata XML, normally it's API version 45, and here you can declare an attribute saying, okay, this Lightning Web component can be used on the app builder, can be used in community. So it's just like an Aura framework, we were using implement keyword. So instead of using implement, we can use this XML. So again, I'm not going to discuss much about this. Let's use this simple component. So again, okay. So this is the one good part about Visual Studio. It will give me lint error upfront, okay, that whatever the issue here is, that it's saying is not a valid attribute.
On click, I guess. C should be small.
Okay, okay, you are right. Who is speaking?
This is Payal.
Hey Payal, thank you so much. You seems you have a good knowledge and good hand on the LWC.
I kind of started, yeah.
Thank you. So now that's right. On click was C was capital, that was not working. I go back again. Greet user. Now on the greet user JavaScript, all I have to use now is that, okay, in this element they have declared a template, right? Because if you go on HTML, the first thing is template. I'm going, okay, from this go on template, and from template search any element. Very selector. Search any element which has a class as, so our input element has a class, this one. I'm going to search this, and it will give me a value, and I'm going to say this variable, this, and I'm already saying that, okay, this, we are going to track this variable. So I'm saying the greeting variable needs to have whatever the text input is there, dot value. So very simple. So what we did is we set that
Import. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, sorry. No, thank you, thank you. So I forgot to import the track. You are right. No, please go on. Please help me if I'm missing anything. So that's right. So you have to import multiple modules so that just to make sure your component is not much heavy. Initially, I only imported Lightning element, but if you have to use tracks, so basically what it is doing is it's creating a variable named greeting. Now this variable name greeting is going to be bidirectional binding. So if you change in HTML, it will be reflected in JavaScript. If you change in JavaScript, it will be reflected in the HTML. And to do the double binding, we have to track this variable. So the greeting is our variable. All I have to do now is just use that variable the way, any way I want. So I can say, okay, hello. And to use the variable, we have to use a curly brace, and the variable name is greeting. And that's ready. That's our first Lightning Web component. Very simple. We will go slowly, fast on this one, but let's understand this. So I'm going to push this element. Okay, and now I have to add this element in my app, my bad. So in column 1, how do I use that element? Exactly same, you use a Lightning component, C colon, and name of your Lightning Web component, which is greet text LWC. I'm not going to use any page layout or anything. I'm going to use this demo app to keep using components. Again, I will run the same command, sodx force source push, and it is going to push my component. Let's refresh the page. Hopefully everything is working fine. So this is the icon. Like I said, I don't know what is that icon, but looks good. You can change that icon here. You can change the icon. I use custom made. You can use something else. And I'm saying hello. Oops. So now we have to debug. That's why it is not happening.
Jitendra, the node value in the JS file.
Okay, node value.
In the JS file, yeah, line number 9. Text input dot value will come instead of that.
Oh, right. Awesome. Thank you. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. It has to be value. I'm going to push again. Let's reload this. And I will say, Lord, please work. Oops. We will solve.
No, there was some beta sign.
Correct. At the end of the
Yeah,
file.
some beta sign at the end of.
Yeah, 11.
Yeah. That's the life of programmers. Thank you. Hopefully it will work now. I will not going to use my name because it is not working. I will use something else. Let's say Saturday. Hello, Saturday. Oops. So it was not the issue of code. It was the issue of my name. So we are done. So this is very simple Lightning Web component. Just to give a heads up, just to summarize what we exactly did. We created Lightning Web component using Visual Studio Code. 3 files gets created: HTML file, JavaScript file, and the meta file. Our HTML file is exactly template, like we discussed in HTML5 vanilla. That's what Salesforce is leveraging behind the scene. Here you can have anything you want, which is an HTML. And if you want to plug your JavaScript in the code, you have to use this JS file, which is here. And this JS file is basically simple. We have to import all the module which we want to use. We have to create a class which extends Lightning element, because we are creating custom Lightning component, custom web component. We are going to say, okay, I need a variable. Let's say the name of the variable is greeting. By default, that variable is going to have Apex server. We have to track for the bidirectional usage for this method, which is a greet user method. Now what we did is we created a button. On the click of button, this method is called greet user. So on the greet user, we will get an event. We are getting an error because we are not using that event at all. That's fine. So what we did is, now our Lightning Web Component means this dot template will have many elements there. Now in my case, I'm not interested in Lightning button or anything. I'm interested in input. Multiple ways to select it: ID, class, whatever you want. I used class normally, which is not suggested. You should always use ID, but that's fine. So I said, give me an element which have dot means class text input, and then what I'm saying is get that value, assign that value in this variable. This variable is bidirectional binding. I'm coming back here, I'm saying hello variable, which is a great thing. So that's how simple Lightning Web Component work without any Apex or anything. So we will go slowly here, okay, and we will be creating one few more components basically, okay, or maybe I will improve this component itself. So the another one which I want to show is a communication between this component and the Lightning component, because that is one of the very important part, and then Apex, how to call an Apex and everything that we will see, but how to communicate is more important. So let's do that. But before that, what I would need to do is I need to create a Lightning component, because I want to show how Lightning component and Lightning Web component can communicate. They can coexist. That is the advantage. If you're thinking that, okay, because of the Lightning Web component, my Lightning components are going to be obsolete, there would be no use, that's not right. Both components can talk to each other. So let's create a Lightning component, and I'm saying the Lightning component name is event demo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a quick aura attribute, and name of that aura attribute I would like to have is txt, and I will get this attribute from event. Okay, so not a good choice of variable, but we have to do that. String, its type is string. Now what I will do is I will create a div. I will always, as my best practice, I always give parent div class as SLDS, and I will simply say here is in parent Lightning component. I will just say this. I will come back here. Okay. Now what I would be doing is I would create my Lightning Web component. Let's say my Lightning Web component is let's see here. We'll say Ctrl+Shift+P, create Lightning Web component. I'm going to, this is the folder location, and should be LWC event raise, and I will say. So I'm going to raise event from this HTML, okay, and from this Lightning Web. And what I'm going to do in this dev is, again, like this, I will create a div tag always, and I'm going to have kind of same attribute here. Here. Using input class, again I will say input text input. And then what I will do is I will again create a Lightning component. Again I will go here, I will just copy paste the code. I really don't like writing everything again. So what I'm doing, so this is the child Lightning component, Lightning Web component, okay? And I'm saying this button should be, label should be sent to Aura component. I will not use Lightning component because it would confuse all of us. So I will, instead of Lightning component, I will say Aura component. And then I will say raise event. Now we have to declare this variable, declare this method as a raise event. So I will go in the JavaScript. And in the JavaScript, we have everything ready here. I will create a method named as a, is event. We will get a parameter saying event. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get same my code here. I will copy paste the old code. This worked that time, it should work now as well. So in this method, what I'm going to do is, whatever the value would be entered in here, that value I'm going to send back. And how I'm going to do it, I will discuss later, not now. So in the demo app, I have to. So this time I'm not going to use the Lightning Web component. I'm going to use this component, which is event demo. This is the Aura component I have just created. And on event demo component, we have to, so in parent component I already said. So here, now I'm going to do the composition. So in the Aura framework, Aura component, we can use Lightning Web component. So I'm saying LWC event raise. I'm going to do this just now. And it's Lightning component, it's Lightning Web component. Just in the Lightning Web component, I will say I am Lightning Web component. So let's run this command. So we created so many components locally, and we want to push that to the scratch org. If you want to directly create Lightning Web component in the org, not in the scratch org, then Amit has a good video on that. You can refer that video if you directly want to work on the org instead of scratch org. Let me reload it. So here, so this is what it looks like. This is a parent Aura component. This is Lightning Web component. The expectation is I will say hello Apex or anything. When I click on this button, what I want to do is this button should send this hello Apex text to the parent one. If we can establish this result, that means we know how the event communication is working between Aura and the Lightning. So let's go back on our code. So in our code, we have JavaScript. So this is, I'm in child. Now I'm going to raise the event. Now the question is, how do you raise the event? It's very simple. All I will going to do, so this is not, I'm not going to use greeting. So I just copy pasted, so my bad. I will say there is a constant and I will simply use the word v. Okay. And then I will create another constant and I will say, I'm going to say text change event, and this is nothing but a method, and the name of the method is custom event. Okay. Let me see. And custom event, basically there is, so what event I need to raise? So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to raise txt change event. And what is the definition here? So I'm saying here that I'm going to pass some detail. And this is the syntax you can find the Salesforce documentation. You can pass, so right now I have only one variable. You can pass object, you can pass, and normally we pass array, but I'm going to just pass one variable v. So what I just said that create a custom event. The name of the custom event is text change, and the text change is going to have a value v. Now what is in v? It's the input whichever we will going to enter here. And to fire this event, fire event, I will be posting all these source code on my GitHub repository, and you can just copy paste and use it. So I am saying this dispatch event. Let me see, there's no typo. Dispatch event, and I'm just going to say dispatch this. So now we have raised the event. So here, as per this, we on the click of this method is going to call, and we have just raised an event. and event has a word hello text. Now how this hello text would be given to the Lightning component? So let's go back here. Let's go on our event demo here. We already raised. Now, one of the beauty about this, you don't have to remember a lot of syntax. At least I'm not finding it difficult to remember. All I have to say, what was the event which I raised? Sorry, let me close this. So I raised txt change. So the format which we have to use is, we have to do something like this. We have to use the word on and the name of the event. Now the name of event is txt change. That's all. So whatever we write as a method here, it becomes attribute. So whatever you have written here, txt change, this txt change became math attribute, function attribute in our component. So whenever we are using this component, so right now we are using component in Aura. So this became, all you have to do is add a word on and then event name. Text change can be anything, text change, value change, whatever you like to say. Now what I want to use, it's old Lightning component. So in the old Lightning component world, I have to go and I have to create some method. So let's say the method I'm going to create is LWC, Lightning Event Handler. Now what I will do is, I already have this parameter here. So I'm going to say data from Lightning Web component. And we already have this variable defined, assuming that we would populate everything here. That's how it is going to go. Now let's work on this method. So in order to work on this method, I'm going to open the controller, old Aura framework. Now in this controller, all I'm going to do is write a simple. So how do we capture the event? I'm going to say variable event data is equals to event dot get parameter. So the question is, what is going to be the parameter name? The parameter name, I will go back on my child Lightning Web component, and the parameter name is simply v. I'm simply passing the v. So I will just use that here, and I'm going to say simply give me the v. It can be anything, good name, proper name. I just use the word v. All I'm going to do now, I'm assuming everything worked fine, component dot set, and let's set the attribute. And this is the event data here. We are almost done now. Attribute name is txt from event. That's what we are going to use to show that data is received. And I'm going to go back here. And that's it. So let me clear my screen. I will again run the push command. So
On component level, line number 8, I think there is an exclamation sign was missing.
Component level here.
Line number 8. The exclamation sign.
Oh, right. Let me. You are right. Actually, yeah, that's a very good catch. So Lightning Web component syntax is this, but Lightning old component syntax is this. Very good catch. Thank you so much. I will push back again. So that's really, I mean, I'm normally having a typo issue of remembering. So Lightning old, you have to have this sign, but in the new world, as you can see, you don't need that sign because HTML5 does not need that sign. Let's go back, reload. Again, I'm not going to use my name. It's not lucky. I will use something not as ours. Okay. Awesome. So it worked in the first attempt. So let's summarize. How did we do? So again, this is a Lightning component, and this is Lightning Web component. And we are having a communication between two components. So, and how we did that is we created a old component. We created a new component named LWC event raise. In HTML, we don't have anything fancy. All we have is an input. And on the button click, we are calling a JavaScript method raise event. I went in the raise event. I got the value here, and I created a variable named text change of type custom event, and I have said, okay, the custom event is text change, and it is the detail of the text change is going to be just v, and we have used the out of the box this dot dispatch event, and we are passing this variable. So once we are doing this, we are firing this event in the component on text event change. This method would be called. So this is the old Aura framework method. In the old Aura framework method, so we'll go back here. Sorry, it's not helper, controller. All you have to do is vary event.get parameter, name of the variable which we passed, and we are setting. That's all. So I think team, we are already 7 minutes over, and two things I wanted to again discuss about how the Lightning data service works and how the Apex works. Both. So I want to hear from you guys. You want to continue, or I can simply say where you can find on the Salesforce official documentation. Yeah. Okay, here. So I already have it open. So in Salesforce documentation, it's talk about how to do the Lightning data service. Okay, and we can go on here. There are multiple examples available here on how to edit record, how to create record. Okay, create a record with custom field layout. The one thing to understand here, the Lightning web component is using Lightning data service on the basis of Lightning UI API. So UI API is something which Lightning Experience is using to interact with Salesforce and standard and the custom object data manipulation. So that's what is happening behind the scene. If you go back on my previous screen, this is how the things are working. So our Lightning web components are going to use the Lightning data service. Lightning data service behind the scene is using user interface API, and that user interface API is doing actual talk with the database. Okay, so that's about how to use a Lightning data service. Now, how to use an Apex class. Call Apex is also again very easy.
Really great. If we can include only one demo for the Lightning data service. For the Apex, I will share the recording with the everyone, so they can review that one and can see how to call the Apex class.
Okay, so Lightning data service is not going to take, I think, more than 10 minutes. Less than 10 minutes, we should be able to knock it out. Let's do that. And anyone, if you want to skip, I understand we already over 1 hour. I really appreciate all of you joining, but I would suggest if you can stay 10 more minutes, it would be good. Just 10 minutes, give me. So I will again create a new Lightning web component. This time I will say Control-Shift-P, create Lightning web component in LWC folder, and name of the component I can say DS demo. And here I'm going to create another row, and in another row I'm going to call this method, let me say, sorry, I will just say to place column to placeholder. This is a grid system placeholder, and in the second row first column I'm going to use this new component which we created, and new component is LWC underscore, sorry, not LWC, it's a DS demo. Let me close this, it is causing confusion to me. So DS demo, that's all. So now how we are going to do it. So in the DS demo.html, all I will do is I'm going to the Salesforce documentation here, and in the Salesforce documentation, working with Salesforce data, Lightning data service, I'm going to copy one code from here for the record create, basically. Edit a record, that's fine. Create a record, yep. So I will simply copy paste it as it is here. So what it is saying is, okay, we are going to use the Lightning record form. If you have used Lightning data service in Salesforce Aura, you will be familiar with this tag. So I'm saying that object API name is this variable. Variable can be referred in Lightning Web Component, like I said, in curly brackets. These are the field, mode is edit, and on success, we are saying, okay, some method is there. Now, all I will do is, I will just copy this, not as it is, because there would be some problem. I will go on my JavaScript. Headers I will copy. So as you can see, we have imported the schema. So this is how Apex would be also called. So again, this is the power of import. Like I said, one of the 4 pillars of web component. So it is getting account object schema information from here. It is getting the schema information about name field, website field. If you want to include more field, you can have this. And then okay, so here I say, okay, account object is this object. These are the 2 fields which we are going to insert. And what to do if everything is done. So I will say alert. This time I will use alert. And I'm saying record. That's all. And Lightning, and that's it. We don't have to write any Apex. Just let Lightning data service promises. The performance, everything is high class. All I'm going to do is now push this information into the scratch org using the push command. Everything is good. Hopefully, our Aura has the new column here, new row. Yep, it is working. So as you can see, team, this third component, this UI and everything is automatically created by Salesforce. Validation rule is already there. Everything is rendered automatically. I'm going to create an account saying Apex hours, and I'm going to say https apexhours.com and save it. Okay, one thing to notice here, my linter is giving an error on alert, saying that some problem. But it is not necessary that it is always error. As a best practice, you should never use a JavaScript alert. You should use some model window or model component. That is the reason it's an error. It's not the compiler error. Let me save it. Alert, I got it. Record created. Okay. And let's see if this record really exists. Apex hours. And I am on account. So we just created it without writing any UI code or anything, just using Lightning data service. Salesforce automatically created a UI for me. All I have to do is pass the field name and pass the object name. And even if you don't create this method, that's completely fine. But what you have to make sure, you have to populate basically the object name and what are the field, and those are going to come in from the UI API. So one question from Dinesh Kumar: CDN usage restriction applies on LWC as well? Yes, it applies to. Now, one of the advantage which I want to explain all of you, right? How many of you have tried, or can anyone on the call can tell me, can you call a JavaScript API or some third-party API like Ajax directly from Aura framework?
No, it's not possible.
Exactly, but that is possible here. Exactly, locker service. Exactly, I agree. What to answer? That is not possible in Aura framework. That is not possible in the old world. But as for the documentation, it is possible in the new framework, and that's something surprise for me. I'm very happy on that one.
Hey, this is Mohit here. Actually, it is possible in Aura components also. You know, all that you need to do is you'll have to declare your cross-site script. There's a place in the admin settings you'll have to declare that, but it's definitely possible actually to even call client-side Ajax.
Awesome, thank you. So Mohit, thank you so much for joining. So CV here, CSP setting, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's called CSP. Yeah, it's called CSP.
Okay,
and,
awesome.
It's if you declare a CSP, basically you should be able to call
Perfect
calls. And there are examples also in the Aura developer guide, you will see that actually you can use it in flows and
Awesome. Thank you,
Oh,
Mohit. So
okay,
even
thank
I
you.
was not, I was not aware about that. And exactly same way LWC also suggests. So you can do the third-party callout in Lightning Web Component, but here also you have to add those URLs in the trusted site. Awesome. So Mohit, you can answer a few of the question here because you are working on LWC for the long time, and we do have some question in the chat window.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So one of the questions I think was, why LWC? Like, what is different with LWC, and why we should actually go with LWC? Like, how is it different than Aura components? Right. So let me sort of answer my view, and then Jitendra, feel free to add yours. So I think the problem with the Aura components was it was like a designed model from Salesforce. It was not web standard based. It's something. It was a custom framework basically developed by Salesforce, right? It used to follow the architectural best practices, but it was all custom built by Salesforce. They had to define how you define attributes, how you define your events, etc., etc. It was all custom, built using the Aura framework. But what web components do is they expose the standards basically. So this is how a component is done in other world as well, like apart from Salesforce, right? Generally as a W3C recommendation. And that's why Salesforce is slowly moving towards web components because they are standard. It will be irrelevant of Salesforce stack. Salesforce is adding their own metadata and all the platform capabilities to the open source web component. So the other thing about web components is, as you can see, like there's definitely improvement in the rendering performances, and also syntax wise it's very very similar to ES6 JavaScript. And syntax wise also there are a lot of it reduces a lot of boilerplate code compared to Aura framework. And as you can see, it is more cleaner. Like if you look at Aura bundles, you add your variables, which are basically like attributes, directly on the markup. But if you look at the web components, what you do is you add your variables all in the JavaScript, right? Your component markup is a lot cleaner basically.
Yeah, completely agree with you, Mohit, what you said. And we actually already covered in the first 5 minutes exactly what we just discussed. Anyone, any other question? So why we cannot develop Lightning Web Component in Developer Console? Mohit, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So LWC is actually, so the developer console, so there was a blog post from Salesforce where Salesforce said that, eventually they will, they are working on something which is better than developer console. So, it would have been a lot of effort for them to, provide this LWC editor in the developer console, which eventually is going to retire anyways. So that's why I think Salesforce did not invest much time in making the providing that LWC capability in the dev console directly. So and Visual Studio Code extension is anyway the standard recommendation now. So that's why I think they don't support it directly on the dev console. But they do have something like Playground. I don't know, Jitendra, you have showed that Playground thing. So in Playground, you can play with sample code. And yeah, they don't have plans to support anything for LWC. But I think Safe Harbor, and again depending on the blog post, they said they are working on something which is better than dev console for everything, for Aura components, Apex and LWC.
Yeah, so I have not shown the Playground yet, Mohit. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for bringing that up.
Yeah. So if you click on that Playground, it will. So there's one more tab there, right on the top, which is Playground. Yeah.
Yeah.
This brings the Playground. So Playground allows you to like add project files and kind of experiment with it on fly. But yeah, I mean, this is not, it has its own limitation. Like, it doesn't support data services or anything from the server, but everything that the web components support on the client side, you can play with it.
Yeah. Good answer, Mohit. Yeah. So in short, what I would say is the reason why Salesforce is not supporting LWC on Dev Console yet is Salesforce is trying to make Visual Studio as a standard, and the replacement of host.com ID. And the second, something what Mohit said, that Salesforce is already working on something new. I know this was the news around 4 years back, but I didn't saw anything coming up. So that's again a safe harbor. Another question from I see Zordiel. In future, is LWC is going to replace Lightning Component? So I will say it's your choice, right? Just like what is happening with the Visual Force and the Lightning Component. My suggestion here is like better to use LWC because it's a lightweight. Your application would be a lot faster because it does not have to go to the custom framework like Aura to parse a lot of things. Okay, so like in an example, early in the morning, right, when we started this session, we discussed first 30 minutes on how HTML5 works. And in HTML5, if you see that there is a template tag, and if you see our Lightning Web component, our Lightning component also starts with here, template. So it does have some interceptors in between, some interceptor framework, which try to do some compilation and some work for us, but it's very lightweight and as per the industry standard. So we should start adopting LWC, no doubt. But your old Lightning component, they will not go away. They will still work. Kiran, can we have Lightning Web component as a parent of Aura component? That's a good question. I have not tried that. Mohit, can you answer that question, please?
Yeah. So, sorry, what was the question? Is it
so in the demo we saw that Lightning Web component was the child component. I am pretty sure that Lightning component web component can be parent as well, but I don't have any demo or any source code around that. So do you want to point on that one? How that works?
I have also not tried actually to see, if you can make the web component as the primary component, right?
The document says that it's not possible.
Yeah, the document clearly, I think it's not possible, right? The opposite is not possible at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Even I also checked somewhere, I remember it say no.
Yeah, I think it's in the doc actually. I just got the doc, so let me share that in the chat. So if you look at this, there's a big important note that Aura components can contain Lightning Web components. However, the opposite doesn't apply, meaning you cannot have a Lightning Web components containing Aura components.
Hi Jitendra, this is Gurpreet, and also one more thing I just wanted to add here. For the Aura component, as Salesforce recommend, always use the component event. Similarly, in case of the Lightning Web component, I think we don't use as an parent.
Right. So in today's demo, right, what we talk about a very simple event propagation demo, right? Event propagating from the child to parent. But let's say if the components are not in the same DOM, then you have to use PubSub model, and there is a source code available on the GitHub. That how do you want to communicate between two components if those two components are not in the same DOM? Okay. So in terms of the best practice is also always here in the Lightning Web component. Also try to use if it's in the same DOM, because that would be not much overkill for the browser. But in terms of capability, yes, there is a capability that two separate DOM component can talk to each other. I think like application event. Did I answer your question, or I went somewhere else, Gurpreet?
Yes, Jiten.
Perfect. So let's see. Next. Thank you. Amit, Mohit, Any other question? Do you see the chat window which we can discuss?
Yeah, I think one of the other question, Eclipse is getting ruled out. SF won't support for it anymore. So why VS specifically and not, Eclipse or other things is the question. I think the reason why VS Code is basically because, VS Code is standard for, it's been widely adopted, and I think it is becoming standard for all the, JavaScripting, TypeScripting, and it has all the plugins for other languages, etc., etc. So knowing that, I think Salesforce, said, yeah, and it also has its own extension on the VS Code, right? So that's why I think VS Code is being, sort of recommended and supported.
Yeah. Thank you, Mohit. So team, if you can still see my screen, right? Let me show you something. By doing it simply, why I like VS Code. It's not if you are a Salesforce developer, you would get an advantage, okay, of course, but not that much. Like normally I work on non-Salesforce technologies a lot. So let's say I create some demo HTML, okay. In the real world, what you have to do is you have to write each and everything. Just giving a small snip, maybe the tip of the iceberg there. See here what is happening. Everything came up. This is just one a very, very small demo that why the VS Code is far, far better. Very fast. I don't have to write much. Templatings are there. A lot of plugins like Mohit said are there. You can have your code snippet. And if you see kind of the trend in the last 2 years, VS Code has almost outrun every other IDE. I'm not talking about the Salesforce. I'm talking about overall. VS Code almost is the #1 IDE, and that is the reason Salesforce is trying to go with this. It has a lot of advantage, lot of plugins you can use for Python, Ruby, PHP, whatever the programming language you have. You don't have to switch IDEs. Some different for Salesforce, and some different for Ruby, and some different for PHP. That's one of the advantage in my opinion.
Yeah, and also I think one of the other things about VS Code is the APIs are very straightforward, right? Like they provide you APIs to write extension. Obviously, Salesforce has authored an extension, right?
Right.
But there is nothing stopping you from going and creating your own extensions. Like I created few as well, and it was straightforward. Like it's not so complicated. Like it's all TypeScript. If you know JavaScript or TypeScript, you should be able to create your own workflow and extensions on top of it, for what you need. So that's other thing, like the extensibility, right? It provides you all those core APIs for you to do your stuff. So I think that is one of the reasons why it's been adopted well, and every language is creating its own plugin or extension plugin basically to work with it.
Yep, completely agree. So one question here is another question I saw somewhere is React or Angular is supported in LWS. I do know that there is a Aura container in Aura framework to support React and Angular, but I don't think I saw anything that about Lightning Web Component. So really, I don't know answer. Mohit, do you know that answer?
Yeah, I mean, so there is no container kind of a concept, but you can import the whole library, just like how you used to do it in Aura bundles. Like you can put everything in static resource and import it. So the answer is like yes and no. Like yes, because technically it's possible. No, because there's no lot of use case, to do it, because LWC itself is so robust that you can pretty much do anything. I don't know why someone would want to use another framework on top of standard specification, right? So yeah, the answer is definitely you can, because you can put your whole library in the static resource, and then you can import that as a module, and then you would have access to everything. And on the front end as well, you can pretty much load that whole thing. So it is possible, but I think that's not recommended at this point, or I don't know officially they recommend or not. It's you will have to actually work with Salesforce if you are going to do something like that, mix and matching things to find out if it is actually compliant, even from the security perspective and the support.
Yep. Any other question? Amit, do you see any other question at the chat window?
Look like we are good.
Sandesh, does LWC supports pub and sub? Yeah, it does support, right? I said there is a source code available. You can go ahead and check. But you need pub sub event only. When I say pub sub, I'm talking about the event, yes. That you need to go, you need to use what I say. Let me show you something here instead of saying I do have a resource. You can pub sub model. No, here. Handle event when the components are not on same DOM. You can use pub sub model and source code is here. You can use this as an example how to do that. And this is needed only if the two components are not the same DOM. Next question, does IntelliJ support LWC? Frankly, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yes, it does. So
Perfect.
the IntelliJ added the support. So. Yes.
And do you know, Mohit, about does Welkin support LWC?
I'm not sure about Welkins, honestly, but I know that IntelliJ for sure supports it because I've seen developers using IntelliJ, and Scott Wells, who's the developer for IntelliJ, he posted a tweet, a month back when LWC was launched that they do support it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
honestly, the LWC. I mean, I will be surprised if Welkins or any other tooling third-party vendor does not support LWC, because LWC has it's supported in the metadata API and the tooling API both. So it'll be surprising if somebody doesn't support it. My extension supports it, so
so we have to use your extension.
I do also have my extension, right? So it does support LWC against both scratch arcs and non-scratch arcs. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely we will do a session in the Apex hour with your plugin.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Now you're getting public.
Not public.
I mean, I'm thinking, wait. Now public is asking Mohit to take a session and Mohit is not able to say no.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, Mohit, I would also like to see your session on how you have created a plugin. That would be awesome.
Yeah, sure.
What are the other questions here? Can two isolated LWC? Yeah, they can communicate with each other. Answer to Kiran. I don't see any other. Okay, awesome. I think we are all good. I don't see any other question missing here. Thank you so much for everyone joining us early in the morning and late in the night. I really appreciate all of your weekend giving us around 1 or 2 hours. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone.